Tearout sucks. It can take a project that you've been working on for the last couple of weeks and totally ruin it. But once I started to understand tearout and how it happened, my cuts got way cleaner. So in this video, I'm not just going to explain what tearout is, I'm also going to show you ways to avoid it altogether. And if you can't avoid it, I'm going to show you ways to hide it. So what the heck is tearout anyway? Basically, the cutting tool is breaking and lifting wood fibers before they get sliced cleanly. And then once I understood the physics of what was actually happening, it was a lot easier to solve the problem. Tearout usually happens when the fibers lose support. And if you look closely, most cutting tools have a gap around the blade or bit. And once those fibers reach that unsupported area, they're free to bend, break, or tear out. And that tear out can really ruin a really nice, expensive piece of wood. Or you may have to sand a ton later to try and fix it. Or that project that you meant to be stained might need to be painted. And for the longest time, I sort of just assumed that it was totally unavoidable, and that's just what some tools did to wood. Maybe it was the wood, maybe it was my cheap blade. I wasn't really sure, and I just tried to work my way around it. And I will tell you that once you start noticing tear out, you'll start to see it everywhere. One thing I definitely underestimated was blade sharpness. A dull blade usually tears fibers apart instead of slicing them cleanly. And many times the blade isn't even dull, it's just dirty. Sometimes you don't realize how dirty or dull the blade is until you finally clean it or replace it. Sheet goods seem to be a lot harder on blades than solid wood. MDF, melamine, plywood, all those glues and binders are pretty tough on your cutting edges and can dull your blade. Woods like pine can leave a bunch of pitch and sap and can really gunk up the blade. So before you assume the blade is dull, it's worth cleaning it because sometimes it's just dirty. You can definitely tell when a blade is dirty. You can actually see like a brown gunky buildup on the tips of the blade. There's lots of nice ways to clean your blade. I like to use kind of a soft bristle brush, even like a toothbrush, because I don't want to actually scratch the surface. And I do think that blade maintenance is even more important than buying a really expensive blade. Now granted, yes, an expensive blade is going to last a little longer or even a lot longer than a cheap blade. However, you could easily drop that blade and chip a tooth or something. I like to be somewhere in the middle. I like these Freud blades. I have a combination blade and this rip blade that I use on my table saw. I've actually had these blades for years, and for the most part, they still cut really well. They're still fairly sharp. I've never had them sharpened, but I do clean them frequently, and that seems to help a lot, and I can immediately tell the difference between a clean blade and a dirty blade. Am I pronouncing Freud right? If I'm not, please leave it in the comments. Yes, so even a good blade, the most expensive blade, if it gets dirty or dull, it's not going to cut very well at all. And as you're making your cuts, pay attention to how the cut feels. If it feels like you're having to push way too hard, the blade might be dirty or dull, and it might be time to either have it sharpened or replaced. And using the right type of blade can make a much bigger difference than you think. Different blades interact differently with the wood. For example, if I'm cutting plywood, I usually want a blade with a high tooth count that slices more cleanly. I did a project once and didn't realize I had my rip blade in the saw, and it was not good. I ended up with a ton of tear out before I actually realized I was using the wrong blade. And sometimes switching blades solves the problem immediately. So if you're having issues, make sure you have the right blade. I typically use my combination blade the most, and that's because the blade is exactly what it says. It's sort of like a multi-purpose blade. I'm going to be doing crosscuts. The combination blade is my best choice. And when I'm doing long cuts, especially on my table saw, I like to use my rip blade. It just seems to make a cleaner cut, and it seems to do it faster and more effortlessly. And if you look at the blade, it actually shows you what it's good at and what it's not good at. It says right here, rip wood 3/4 inch to 2 3/4 inch. It says it's excellent at that. And down here it says crosscut wood, chipboard, plywood, laminate, fair, non-ferrous, not recommended. Blade height is also something that is typically overlooked, and the ideal height might surprise you. For years I kept my blade really low like this because that's what I heard that you should do, and it's probably the safest because there's less of the blade poking out. But when the blade is really low, the teeth can pull on the fibers more instead of slicing through them. Raising the blade changes the angle of the cut and often leaves a cleaner edge. I like the top of the wood to be just at the bottom of the gullet. That lets the tooth cut down into the wood, giving you a nice clean cut, and the gullet is able to remove chips efficiently. I'm kind of a nerd, and I like to experiment with what blade heights work best in different situations. What blade height do you guys like? Let me know in the comments. And this is where things really started clicking for me. Tear out usually happens when the fibers aren't properly supported. The good news is, there's lots of ways to support those fibers. So a lot of tear out prevention is really just supporting those fibers long enough for the blade to cut through them cleanly. Even masking tape can help hold those fibers together. And zero clearance inserts can make a huge difference, especially with plywood. Backing up your cut with a piece of scrap wood helps too. The main ways I like to help support my workpiece is just by using my crosscut sled, which is pretty much the only way I make a crosscut now, or just making sure I'm using my zero clearance insert when I'm making a straight cut. Obviously, if you're doing a bevel cut where the blade is tipped to the side, you can't use your zero clearance insert. But one of my new crosscut sleds has a beveled edge on it, so I can make beveled cuts with it, and then the workpiece is still properly supported. So generally, I sort of just keep my regular insert in because I'm using a crosscut sled a lot, and then if I'm going to be doing a lot of rip cuts, I'll throw my zero clearance insert in. And sometimes just using a nicer quality piece of plywood can really help. And once I started adding more support to my cuts, the cuts started looking way cleaner. Another trick is simply paying attention to which side of the board matters when the project is finished. Most tools leave the cleanest cut where the tooth enters the wood and the roughest cut where it exits. On the table saw, the tooth cuts down through the top of the board and it exits through the bottom of the face. That's why the workpiece usually chips out more on the bottom side. So if only one side of your project is going to be visible, I usually put the good side face up when cutting on the table saw. I always say that a circular saw is kind of like a little mini upside down table saw. So it's going to be the opposite. The blade comes up from underneath and exits through the top face of the plywood. So when I'm using my circular saw, I usually put the good face down. While this doesn't actually eliminate tear out, knowing this can help save some time trying to clean up any visible damage on your final project later. Just understanding where the blade enters and exits the wood makes tear out problems start making a lot more sense. Tear out with a drill is especially bad. If you don't do anything to control it, there can be crazy amounts of blowout on the backside of a drilled hole. A standard drill bit can destroy the backside of a board, especially plywood. But a Forstner bit usually cuts much cleaner because it scores the outside edge before removing material. And drilling halfway from both sides really works well if you need a super clean hole. I usually start with a small pilot hole. This gives me a reference so I know where to drill on both sides. That way the hole meets perfectly in the middle. Even putting a piece of scrap board underneath can make a huge difference. And not all projects require that perfectly clean hole. If you're just trying to build something functional and the way it looks doesn't really matter, maybe don't worry about it. Maybe just use a standard drill bit and just blow that hole open and let it blow out on the backside. Who cares? Sometimes I do that, it just doesn't matter. Or if I know that the backside isn't going to be visible, again, I just don't care. This is just one of those simple things that can make projects look a lot more professional. Tear out isn't just a table saw or drill problem. Pretty much anything that cuts wood can cause tear out. Routers can destroy grain really fast if you move in the wrong direction. And if you're trying to cut a nice straight dado slot in the wrong direction, the router's probably going to wander and mess up your project. And cutting in the wrong direction when cutting juice grooves and cutting boards can really make the blade wander and destroy your board. And what really sucks is that's like one of the last steps of the process. The circular saw and miter saw love tearing up plywood veneers too. But most of the same fixes still apply. Sharp tools, the right tooth count, supporting fibers, and paying attention to grain direction. You can even make a zero clearance insert for your miter saw. I haven't done it yet, but it's on my list. A piece of masking tape can act as a quick zero clearance insert in a pinch. I've had pretty bad tear out with just about every type of tool I've ever used to cut wood. For me, one of the hardest things to do is put a nice router detail here on the end grain part of a board, especially hardwood. And I just have never really figured that out. If any of you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them in the comments. This is something I wish somebody told me earlier. Sometimes the material itself is part of the problem. There's cheap plywood and there's expensive plywood. And I think the main difference is that some of the veneers might be thicker on better plywood, and maybe the glue that they use to bond them together is better. I don't really know, but expensive plywood seems to be less prone to tear out. And sometimes the plywood just sucks. But some of these tips can make even cheap plywood look pretty good. I mean, these days even expensive plywood can be pretty disappointing. I've had lots of huge knots and voids, or the layers are separating, they warp. Plywood's just getting worse these days, and we just kind of have to learn to work with what we have. And sometimes watching social media can give you really unrealistic expectations, and I try to keep myself grounded and be realistic on this channel. Hope you guys appreciate that. If you do, like and subscribe. The more I experience and research Tearout, the more I realize it isn't just part of woodworking. A lot of it comes down to understanding what's actually happening to the wood fibers. And once you start paying attention to this stuff, the projects start looking cleaner really fast. So hopefully this saves you some frustration. Tearout used to drive me absolutely crazy, but understanding why it happens makes it way easier to prevent. I'm curious what tricks you guys use to prevent tearout, because I'm sure there are a bunch of good ones that I haven't even tried. Please leave them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.